This one's a little bit out there, but it's something that's been on my mind today, and just want to say a few words about it because it's something I have seen quite a lot online. I've touched on this subject before briefly. The subject is male feminists, for want of a better term. Now, if you are a man and you consider yourself a feminist, don't be put off immediately by what I'm talking about here, because this is not some sort of lazy attack on guys who describe themselves that way. Be absolutely clear, I respect men who understand that women's rights are human rights. That's just goes without saying. And I have enormous respect for male feminists in parts of the world where that's particularly taboo. You know, countries like Iran, Pakistan, where there are very conservative attitudes towards women, and where men do speak up, and they themselves face I was going to say ridicule, but in some cases even worse than that. I mean, we saw, for example, in the headscarf protests in Iran a few years ago, there were a lot of women killed and brutalized, but there were also young men killed in those protests, so that shouldn't be forgotten. Um, that is an important thing because in any society, in any group of people, you are going to get different opinions. You're going to get people who are willing to stick their neck out, who will show courage. So I have a lot of respect for men who stand up for women's rights in that sense. And whilst I wouldn't put myself in their level of courage, I've always tried to speak up on human rights generally across the board. But I do see a difference between that and certain guys who I feel just virtue signal, um, or to put it perhaps rather crudely, white knight in a certain way. Let me explain what I mean. I've seen a phenomenon in recent years, and sometimes it's from women, but it's particularly from other men, and it's this extremely self-righteous sort of thing, whereby they will go on some sort of comment thread, and often the OP has got a very minimal amount to do with chivalry or anything like that. It's almost an unrelated subject, but they'll seem to get some sort of gratification from playing holier than thou towards other men. So, as an example, I came across one post that was generating a bit of controversy because it was promoting the idea that women should run in groups, and a lot of people were pointing out, well, wait a second, isn't this just a general issue about runners and pedestrians and respect for each other and that sort of issue? I personally think that a large group of healthy young adults, whether they be male or female, should be respectful to others on the pavement. I mean, if it's a choice between a group of healthy young women and an elderly couple, or for that matter, a man in a wheelchair, who's more vulnerable? I recall seeing a group of teenage girls who were lying or sitting rather, on the steps of my local subway transit system, and it was rather irritating because we're completely blocking the bottom of the steps. And I asked politely but firmly, "Excuse me," and they tutted and pulled faces and stuff like, almost as if it was an affront for me to ask to get past. And I couldn't resist. I said, those steps are for people to walk down, not for you to sit on. And of course, I got a lot of verbals for that, but. Um, This is why I have a problem with certain men who white knight in this way, because they treat women almost like they almost infantilize women. They have this kind of rosy-eyed view of the world whereby all women are innocent and all men are potential threats. I mean, their view of the world is almost even more black and white than some of the most ardent female feminists. Um, it's a bit pathetic actually because they they don't get the nuances of lots of situations. But they come out with insults like any man who disagrees with a woman must be an incel, or one I saw this evening, which um, made me think of making this video, was that this guy actually had a go at, oh, you must all be divorced men. Now, why is someone's marital status called for judgment? That's interesting because people get divorced for a range of reasons. What the hell does he know about someone else's private situation as to why they're divorced? There could be any reason for that. Maybe his wife was unfaithful. Maybe they mutually agreed they didn't love each other anymore. The way I view divorce in that sense is it's a private matter. Unless it's a question of abuse, then who am I to judge? And so for this self-righteous Billick to come in and talk about, oh, you're all incels or divorced men, and he had laughing emojis, and he was just such a smug individual. Honestly, it kind of pissed me off. Now, I'm not a divorced man, but I don't judge divorced men. I think of the line in Friends when Ross Geller says, "Divorced men are not bad men." They should had a little joke in that episode. Should start mugs about it. Mug franchise. But this is what I really dislike about these sort of guys. They go around thinking that they're holier than thou, and they're so judgmental of other men. It reminds me a little bit of certain female feminists who claim that they're all about women self-sovereignty. They go around telling other women what to do. Now, to be clear here, there are times that judgment is appropriate. I'm very judgmental of Conor McGregor because I think someone like Conor McGregor, who's a glorified thug, and I have no problem saying that, I think people like that should be judged. Some men that absolutely, you know, I'm not talking about someone saying this individual is really quite despicable, like he abuses women and therefore that's just any decent person is going to have a judgment there. I'm talking about these self-righteous guys that go around thinking that making sweeping statements about their fellow men makes them clever. It doesn't. And they perpetuate the worst sort of misandry. Um, so, going around judging other guys simply for having a disagreement with women is very, very different from judging other guys from being genuinely bad people, genuinely abusing women and so on. I just think it's absurd. You cannot compare someone like Conor McGregor. I've no problem pinning him up as an infamous example, um, versus a guy simply saying, well, wait a second, there's sexist double standards here. Disagreeing with a woman doesn't make someone an incel or a virgin or a divorced man or whatever that'll perfect you insult you want to throw out. Um, these guys need to get off their, platform and stop acting like they're so self-righteous because they are so self-righteous. I mean, they don't know someone else's situation. And, when we consider that suicide, this is a very serious issue, suicide is the leading cause of death for young men in this country. When you then see these guys prancing around thinking that they could just pass judgment on other men simply for having a different point of view. I'm not talking about extreme opinions. I'm talking about simply disagreeing with a woman. And then they think, oh, you must be an incel, or you must be a virgin, or you must be. It's utterly pathetic. So I have no problem with male feminists at all. I have no problem with anyone who genuinely is about human rights. I do have a problem with self-righteous individuals who go around just thinking that they know someone's individual situation. If someone's acting obnoxiously, I take the view that they leave themselves open for judgment. I'll give an example. Last night I was in Witherspoon's pub and the guy started kicking off. He wanted to have a fist fight with another man. And, he was acting like a thug. He was banging the glass. The the barmaid was trying to get him to leave. He was just doing himself no favors. Now, I was thinking, even if you're technically in the right and the other guy started, the way you're behaving isn't reasonable. The other guy was actually being quite calm. Um, Banging on the glass and acting like a fag isn't going to do you any favors. So there's certain situations where people act obnoxiously, they're going to be judged. I think that's inevitable. Um, but simply disagreeing with a woman does not make someone a misogynist. Or and guys who go around thinking they're so perfect, they're so gentlemanly, that I think they're making themselves look foolish. I mean, if you genuinely believe in equality, you should accept that some women are also obnoxious and just as capable of being manipulative or cruel or shallow, what have you, as some men are. Now, I will continue speaking out against abusive women. Um, my blood boils when I see thugs who beat up their girlfriends or their wives, that sort of thing. But I have no respect for these self-righteous guys that go around thinking they're so much better than others. I'm very, very opinionated on this channel, but I never say I'm perfect. I never say, you know, I know everything or I'm, but I just observe these things and it just pisses me off that these guys come on the comment threads and think they're so so holier than thou. And yet they expose themselves, they expose their ignorance when they use something like someone's marital status as an attack point rather than their actual opinions, rather than actually having a legitimate argument. When I condemn Conor McGregor, I condemn him on his record and on the sort of things he comes out with. I'm just using him as an example. So there's a basis to that. But I'm not going to attack another man just because he disagrees with a woman. I'm not going to call him names and say, oh, you must be a divorced man or you must be an incel or a virgin. It's a pathetic, ad hominem, baseless attack line. Let me know your thoughts. But yeah, I think some male feminists need to get out of their self-righteous mantle and frankly have more respect for their fellow men.